Hello everyone, welcome to Smitty's Hobbies. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to build a Raspberry Pi device that will control our Peopoly Moai 3D printer via web interface. Completely. You won't need to go to the Moai at all. You'll be able to send files to it, control all the print functions, all the setting functions, everything from a web interface. What makes this kind of nice is it's the way it connects. There is no real electrical connection to the Moai, so you don't have to worry about any kind of shorting out or anything going wrong with the printer. Also, it will allow you to use the printer as normal while this device is hooked up. So let's go quickly through the stuff we're going to need, which I'm going to provide links for in the README files and also in the description below. Start off, we got a 2.5 amp power supply with a micro USB connector, so it plugs right into the USB port, the micro USB on the Pi. This power supply, which I'm listing, also comes with a nice on-off power switch, which goes in between, which makes it nice. We've got a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, has built-in Wi-Fi, so you don't have to add an extra Wi-Fi device on here. The relay module, which will control the Moai, goes in between the Pi and the Moai. The Raspberry Pi camera module, this one comes with quite a short cable. I recommend getting a different cable because I don't think you're going to have all this right next to the camera. I bought this one. It's actually way too long. This one is 6 feet. I'm going to list a 2-foot one in the description. If 2 feet's not enough, you can browse Amazon. They have several lengths and that you can pick up. We've got our 16 gigabyte SanDisk Class 10 card and the holder for it to be able to insert it into our computer. The Flash Air card. This is a 16 gigabyte W04 Flash Air card. The 04 is the newest one, and it's the fastest so far. I'll show you how to set this up and just transfer files just like you had an SD card in your computer, and it goes right to the printer. Also, here's some cables. We're going to need these to plug into the cables on the printer. Some female-to-female jumper wires to go between the Pi and the relay on these header pins here. And also some regular hookup wire that we're going to need to hook these cables, to have them long enough to go down to your Pi where your Pi can sit next to your printer. I'm also going to include some files, some STL files if you want to 3D print a case that will hold these. And guess that's about all the hardware. At this point, we need to go to the PC. We're going to need some software. And I'm going to show you how to format this card and get the image on here for the Pi. Then we'll plug it into the Pi and go from there. Okay, we're here at the computer. We've got the SD card inserted. We're going to need a few pieces of software. The first thing you want to start downloading is the disk image for the Raspberry Pi. So if you come to the Raspberry Pi page, I'm going to have all these listed in the description. You want to download Raspbian, and you want to download this one right here. Okay. Raspbian Stretch Lite. This is the one that you want. This is a minimal interface which keeps the memory on the Pi low so that your website, so that the web controls act as close to real time as possible. So this is the light version. You can download a zip file, which takes actually quite a while. Their site's kind of slow. It could take a half hour, maybe more. If you have a torrent, you can download the torrent, which will be pretty quick. So you want to start downloading that. That's going to take a little bit. So get that going. The next piece you're going to need is SD card formatter by the SD Card Association. You don't want to use format on the PC. You want to use this. Some people have said can be problems by formatting it the other way. So you want to come in here and download the Windows, whichever version of Windows you're running, download that formatter. The other thing you're going to need is Win32 Disk Imager. This is going to allow us to put the image of the Pi onto the SD card. So you want to get that downloading, Win32 Disk Imager. The next piece is Putty, EXE. You're going to come here, and there's two of them available, 32-bit and 64-bit. I don't think it matters which one you use. I've got a 64-bit computer, but I used the 32-bit version. I don't think there's really any difference. So you get Putty here. You'll also need FileZilla, FTP client. You want to download the client version, not the server version. So once you get all that stuff downloaded, you're going to come to the SD card formatter. And you're going to pick the drive that has the SD card in it. And you're going to do a full format, an overwrite format. It's going to take quite a while, so get it going here. Mine says boot. That's because I had it on here before. I'm showing you now how to do it again, so yours will probably just say the drive letter. But you can call the volume label boot or Raspberry Pi or printer or whatever you want to call it. And hit the format. And say yes. Now this is going to take a little bit of time. Let's speed it up. We'll be right back. Alright, our SD card is formatted. Okay. Close that. Next thing we're going to do is open up Win32 Disk Imager that we previously installed. Well, you downloaded it. You need to install Win32 Disk Imager, and then we'll open that up. And you're going to choose the flashed drive that we put in. That's the SD card. We want to choose the SD card, and we're going to choose the file. This is going to be the Raspbian Stretch Lite image that we downloaded. Not the folder, just the image itself. So go into that folder, grab your image, and hit open. So we've got the Raspbian Stretch Lite image here, and we've got the SD card. And we're going to hit write. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes, we do. And that's going to take a couple of minutes. Alright, that's almost done. And 99. Write successful. Okay. Now we're going to get this pop up. You need to format the drive in D before you can use it. Basically, the computer can't read the SD card now because it's got a Raspberry Pi image on it. We want to hit cancel here. D is not accessible. Okay. D cancel. And this is the SD card. Just close out of that. Write successful and exit out of this. Alright, so now we can take the SD card and put it in our Raspberry Pi, and we're going to need to plug the Raspberry Pi into the power supply, put the SD card in the SD card slot, and also plug in an HDMI cable into your monitor or TV or whatever you're going to view it on. It's got to be you can't use a little tiny 3 or 4 inch screen because you won't be able to see the text. You need to use a decent sized screen to plug it into. And also want to plug in a USB keyboard and mouse. Now they can be cordless or regular. They can go into any one of the USB ports on the Pi. So once you get all that plugged in, the USB keyboard, the USB mouse, the SD card, and the power supply, and also a monitor plugged into the HDMI port, you can go ahead and turn the Pi on, and it should boot up on screen. And we'll go to that now. Okay, when you get your Pi plugged in with your keyboard, mouse, HDMI cable, and SD card, you should see something like this as it boots up. Wait for it to get all the way down to the bottom. It'll say Raspberry Pi, or Raspberry Pi login. The default login is lowercase pi. And the default password is Raspberry. And we are logged in at this point. Okay, now first thing we got to do is we're going to type in, now all these commands I'm going to have in the text document included with the downloads on the GitHub. So you can actually copy and paste. If you open up the text file, you'll be able to copy and paste all this stuff in if you want to as you go along with the video. But the first command we're going to type in, everything's always in lowercase. Sudo raspi config, and that's going to take you to this screen. Now the first thing we need to do is set up our network configuration. You use the 4 arrow keys and the enter key to navigate this. So like we'll come down to network and then the right key, and then we can hit enter for select. If you want to set a host name for your Pi, you can. You can call it whatever you want, whether you want to call it, Peopoly Moai Printer, Raspberry Pi 3D printer, whatever you want. You could do it. You could do it here. The default is Raspberry Pi. I'm going to put Raspberry Pi 3. I'm going to call it Raspberry Pi 3. That's what this one is, Raspberry Pi 3. But you can put in whatever you want to call it. Come down to OK, hit enter, and you want to come down to Wi-Fi. Right arrow, select, enter, and you're going to have to choose your country. United States, right arrow, enter, okay. And this is where you put in your SSID and password. You get that from your router. Excuse me. So punch that in here. All right, after you get your network stuff put in, your SSID and your password, on my keyboard, I don't know why, but I cannot use the numpad. I have to use the numbers on this part, on the regular part of the keyboard, otherwise it does weird things. And it does that throughout this setup procedure. So you really don't want to use the number pad if you've got one on your keyboard. All right, we're going to come down to localization options, and we want to set up our time zone. Keyboard layout should be okay. Wi-Fi country we already saved, so that's all right. Interface options, we want to enable the camera. And we want to enable SSH. And that should be it. Would you like to reboot now? Yes. Now at this point, you should not need the keyboard and mouse anymore. If we've got the network settings put in correctly. At this point, we're going to open up PuTTY. Now, we're on the PC now, opening up PuTTY. We do not need to log in and stuff with the keyboard and mouse plugged into the Pi at this point. If you look down near the bottom here, it's got the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. Mine is showing 192.168.1.104. So on the host name on PuTTY configuration, we're going to type in that IP address, 192.168.1.104. And hit open. And it'll say, warning, potential security breach, blah, 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 blah. You click yes. And it should say log in as on your PuTTY. So that's going to be your lowercase pi and Raspberry for the password. And it should come up with a command prompt for Raspberry Pi. So now let me switch the camera over to this view so we can see what we're doing. Alright, on one side of the screen I've got the PuTTY with the, after I've logged in to the Raspberry Pi. And on the right side I've got my text file that I included with the GitHub download. You get all the hardware needed, software needed, miscellaneous items, and we come to commands. I hope that you can read this. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit this and hit Control C on my keyboard, copy. And over here, it's not regular Control P or V for paste. It's just right click on your mouse and it will paste it in there. So the first one is sudo apt-get install RPI update. And once that's done, you'll just come down and click the next thing. And Control C. Right click on your mouse and enter. This is checking firmware and updating it. Take just a minute here. Looks like my download is going to take a little bit of time here. Okay, so after that's done downloading, now you have to do a reboot. So I'll copy that and right click down here, sudo reboot, enter. Now it's saying the network is closed because the Raspberry Pi is rebooting. So you actually start the PuTTY again. There we go. Every time you reboot, you've got to restart PuTTY because it loses connection. And then re-log in. Alright, there we go. So after that, then we do sudo apt-get update, Control C, right click. Now the first one was, the first update was the firmware. This one is software, the updating the Raspbian operating system. This one shouldn't take as long. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to do sudo apt-get upgrade. Control C, right click over here. It says, do you want to continue? It's going to add blah 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 kilobytes of additional disk space. Yes. Going to configure them all. Alright, now that that's done, we're going to do another reboot. Control C, come over here, right click sudo reboot. Of course it's going to lose connection again. We'll start putty up again. Put in your IP address. Wait a second for the Raspberry Pi to reboot. There we go. Log back in. Alright, now we're going to do sudo apt install get. Do you want to continue? Yes. This is installing the Git program, GIT, which will allow us to download stuff from the GitHub. We're going to have to install what's called Wiring Pi next when this is done. Alright, that's done. Now this sudo git clone git Wiring Pi. Control C, right click. Now it's going to download that. Then we got to do change directory, Wiring Pi, Control C, right click, and this command sudo chown, Control C, Control V, and then .build, Control C, right click. It's going to build the Wiring Pi library. Once that's done, okay, now we're at the setup pins position here on what we're doing. So we come down here, sudo nano etcrc local, Control C, Control V. Now this is entering the text editor on the Raspberry Pi. We're going to add these following right here. So Control C, and over here we're going to add it between, we're going to move the cursor with the arrow keys down. Let's put this right in here. Right click, there we go. I like to leave a space after the FI. And Control X, then Y for yes, and then enter. That gets us back out of the text editor. Alright, so now we're going to create the bash commands that allow us to control the printer. So sudo nano clockwise.cgi, Control C, right click, and it enters text editor. And we're going to copy this right here, Control C, right click, Control X, Y for yes, enter. Come to the next one, sudo nano counter CGI, Control C, right click, and we're going to copy this section, Control C, right click, Control X, Y for yes, enter. The next one is sudo nano single click CGI, Control C, right click, and we're going to copy and paste this, Control C, right click, Control X, Y for yes, enter. And then we're going to come down here, sudo nano power.cgi, Control C, right click, enter, and we're going to copy and paste this, Control C, right click, Control X, Y for yes, enter. Alright, then we do sudo chmod 755 clockwise.cgi, Control C, right click. The next one, sudo chmod 755 for counter CGI, Control C, right click. These are giving us access to the newly created subroutines. Control C, right click, enter, Control C, right click, enter. Now we're going to do sudo make directory. We're making a new directory, Control C, right click, var www, enter. Sudo make directory var www cgi-bin, Control C, right click, then sudo chown pi var, right click, sudo chown pi var www, Control C, right click, enter, and the last one to give us access to var www.cgi-bin, Control C, right click, enter. Now we're going to do a reboot. Sudo reboot, Control C, right click, OK, restart your putty. Not sure if you do it too quick, if it'll, let's see here, it might time out. Pretty sure you have to wait for the Pi to completely boot, but let's see what happens. Yeah, you gotta wait. There we go. Okay, so we gotta log back into the Pi, PI, Raspberry. Okay, we're back into the Pi. Now, we're going to move the files, sudo mv clockwise.cgi, var www.cgi-bin, Control C, right click, oop, cannot, okay, before we do that, we want to do cd home pi wiring pi, right click, to change the directory to the right directory. Then we can do sudo move clockwise.cgi, Control C, move it. Then we're going to do the next one, Control C, right click, move it, sudo single click, Control C, right click, move it, Control C, right click, power CGI, and enter. So we moved all those. Now we're going to do another reboot. Okay. You see right here, instead of typing in the IP address every time, I created a saved one so I can just load it. You can do that too. You just give it a name and hit save, and that way all you got to do is click on it and hit load each time. All right. Log back in. Okay. So we are down here. Oops. We're going to install the web server now. Sudo apt-get y, install Lightpad, Control C, right click. Let it run through its thing. And then you'll see some permission denied in here. Don't worry about it. Sudo lightpd enable mod CGI, Control C, right click. And sudo lightpd enable mod fast CGI, Control C, right click. Then we're doing sudo nano, Control C, right click. We're going to modify. There's a setting in here, server document root, and it says var www html. We're going to change it to just var www. So we come up here, we're going to use the arrow keys to come down. And get rid of that HTML. Just the HTML. Leave the and the backslash. So it's just going to be /var/www. And Control X, Y for yes, and enter. Alright, then we're going to do this next sudo. We're going to stop the service, the lightpd service, Control C, right click, and then we're going to restart it with the sudo start. Control C, right click. Alright, now we're going to change the directory to cd var www, Control C, right click. And we're going to do sudo nano index HTML, Control C, right click, and we're going to copy and paste this right here into there. From HTML down to HTML. Control C, right click, Control X, Y for yes, enter. Okay, then we're going to do a sudo chmod 755 index.html, Control C, right click. Now, at this point, if you open up a web browser and up at the top type in your IP address of your Raspberry Pi, you should get a test screen like this that says Peopoly Moai Web Control. Alright, we can close back out of that. Now, we're going to add the camera part of the streaming. Let's see, I think at this point we actually want to do a reboot. Yeah. Sudo reboot. Restart your putty. Give the Pi a minute to reboot here. Log back into your Pi. Alright. So now we're going to do the sudo apt install library JPEG 6.2 turbo dev, Control C, right click. Let that run through its thing. Alright, then apt-get install cmake, Control C, right click. Do you want to continue? Yes. Enter. Okay, once that gets done, we're going to clone this HTTPS MJPEG streamer. Control C, right click, enter. And next one, we're going to change the directory to the new MJPEG streamer experimental. Control C, Control V. And make clean all, Control C, right click, compile that. Next one, sudo rm, Control C, right click, and sudo move, sudo mv, Control C, right click, and then sudo rm mjpg streamer, Control C, right click, enter. Alright, and we're going to do sudo nano etc rc local, Control C, right click. We already edited this once, we're now going to add another line in here. This is a long line. Control C. We need to move the arrow keys down here. Right click and put that really long line in all the way to the and sign. And then Control X, Y for yes, and enter. Alright, now at this point your Pi is basically done. We're going to now need to go to the PC and download from this GitHub, which is in the text file. Alright, once you downloaded the zip file from my GitHub, there'll be several files in here, along with some pictures of wiring and whatnot. We want to open up FileZilla, and you can connect to your Pi by putting in the IP address, the username Pi, and the password Raspberry. And you got to pick, like, I think it's port 22 or something like that, and connect. And what you'll see is your Pi over here. You want to scroll down to VAR, open that up with the plus sign, www, open that up with the plus sign. Okay, now under www, you'll see CGI bin, HTML, and index HTML. That index HTML is the one we created, that little test page. Well, we're going to replace that. And let's see here. The zip file that you downloaded is, just make sure it's somewhere you can access it. And you want to then copy over to the www, make sure you're on the www on the Pi. You're going to replace the index, but you're also going to put in some pictures. You want the power PNG, the knob PNG, arrow left PNG, arrow right PNG, and index HTML. You want all of these, so let's see. Index, arrow, arrow, knob, and power PNG. And we're going to just slide these right over here. I had some in here already. Alright, so you should have in there now CGI bin, HTML, arrow left, arrow right, index HTML, knob PNG, and power PNG. And okay, gotta get out of that. Okay, now we need to go back into PuTTY, and you're going to do this sudo nano var www index HTML. Control C, right click, and it's going to take you to the, oops, oh, do a reboot. and sudo nano var www index html. We're going to edit. Oops, why is that not working? Oh, I'm spelling sudo wrong. We're going to edit the HTML file. That's not right. I didn't overwrite the one that was in there, it looks like. Let's see. It should be this. I'll delete this one. Put the new one in. Hang on just a second. I'm kind of creating this instruction as I go. All right, let's try that again. All right, something's messed up. Hang on. Okay, I updated the information. It'll work for you. Sudo nano var www index html, right click, and you come in here to the HTML file, and you're going to replace right down here where it says your IP. Right there, you need to replace that with the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. So like for mine, it'll be 192.168. Oops, I'm using the number keypad, look at me. You gotta use the arrows to go down to it. Two point 168.1.104, and then Control X, Y for yes, enter. All right. Now at this point, reboot the Raspberry Pi one more time. Sudo reboot. Log in as Pi, password. And go and open a web page to your, let's see, 192.168.1.104. You'll put in your IP address for your Raspberry Pi. You should get this. You got your arrows, your knobs, your buttons, and the only thing we're missing is the camera. I don't know why it says that up there. That'll be fixed also for you. At this point, you can plug your Raspberry Pi camera into your Raspberry Pi, and then reboot, and we'll close this and close this. Reboot your Raspberry Pi after you put the, we'll turn it off. Attach your camera, and then reboot it, and then we'll go to the web page again. Alright, once you plug in the camera and restart your Pi, come to the website, and you should see the camera image, live camera image. Okay, the next part is you're going to hook up the relay unit to the Raspberry Pi using the female to female jumper wires. Turn off your Pi, and you're going to hook it up according to the picture in the GitHub files here. Pretty easy to follow. This picture's in the GitHub, and when you do that, you can restart your Pi and go to the web page and test and make sure each one of these relays is working by hitting the arrow keys, the power button, and you'll see the relays clicking on and off. Alright, so the next part, I'm going to be back here in just a minute, and we'll be on the workbench and we'll be wiring up the cables needed to work with this. Alright, we've got the Pi plugged in, not turned on, camera's on it, we've got the relay module. Gonna need, we'll peel off some of these wires off of your headers that you got here, the female to female connectors. We want a red one, a black one, and then 4 other colors. It doesn't matter what they are really. One of them, however, though, you're going to need to cut a couple of wires and solder these together. This one needs to have 2 on one side and 1 on the other. I just soldered them together and put a piece of heat shrink over that. And then you had the picture there of how this gets wired up. That's included in the download with the zip file. So wire that up like that picture, or like this right here. I've got this. Blue one. And then if you wire this up right, if I don't have this backwards, turn on your Pi. It'll take a second to boot up, and you'll see 2 red lights on the relay board. And then all of them will click on, you'll hear it. Now, my computer's in the other room, so to access the web page, I'm going to use my phone right here. Any device that can go on the web should be able to control your printer at this point. So you go up to the bar, and I'm going to type in the IP address. Oops, I missed one. Go. You should see your camera running. It's an airplane on the ceiling. Camera should be working, and when you click the buttons, let's try the right button. You should see the relays. There'll be 2 of them clicking, on and then off, and then on and then off. The other button should do the opposite. This button, if you click just once, you should be able to do a double click. Power button, power on, power off. So the camera should be working, all the buttons should be working, and your website should be operational. Now we'll show how to wire this so that you can plug it into your Peopoly Moai. Okay, we're going to open up this bag of the JST connectors. We're going to need 2 of these and 2 of these. Basically, we want to wire these so when you plug that in, we want black to be on that pin, yellow to be on that pin. So when you unplug it, just bring it right back this way. And we need to solder just right straight down to the end, so it'll be just like this. On the other end, you want to make sure this is up and these are up. How it plugs in here. So you want that wire for wire. The black wire is going to go here, red wire on the next one, white wire on the next one, yellow on the next one. Now before we do that though, we need wires that are going to come back to our relays. So basically what we're going to do is if you've got wire already, great. If you don't, I put a link to this box which comes with many colors. So let's start off with the black. I'm going to pull some out. I would say two feet should be just about right. So I'm going to snip that off. And we want 2 feet of black, 2 feet of red, 2 feet of white, and 2 feet of yellow. Now I don't have white in this pack, so any other color will work. I'm going to go ahead and use green. What I'm going to do is strip these wires. You can use a hobby knife, you can use wire strippers if you got them. And I'm going to take the red wire and this red, and I'm going to twist them together. Get your solder iron going. I got mine set for about 640 degrees. It's not super critical. You're not soldering components here. Oh, I should start with one on the end, huh? Make it easier. We'll start with the black. Strip that wire. Go to the black. black first, which is all the way down on the end, and twist those two together. If you can't twist them together, strip them back a little bit farther, whatever you need to do. You're going to want to get a little bit of solder. Now I would recommend either using a piece of heat shrink, doesn't need to be that long, half that'll work. If you don't have heat shrink, you've got liquid tape, that'll work also. This is like a liquid rubber that dries pretty quickly. It's got a little brush in here. You can use electrical tape. I wouldn't recommend it. It's going to be hard to get in here anyway. Alright, so we want to make sure we've got the orientation right here. Black goes on this end. If you've got some helping hands, they work great. I'm going to pre-tin each one of these little pins. And let's see, double check. Black is going on this end. I put the heat shrink over it. Okay. This mess. Okay, so the next wire is red on the thing. So we'll go back to the red one. Strip that back. Twist it. Make sure when you set your solder iron, it's not touching anything. And whoop, piece of heat shrink. Color doesn't matter. Next pin is red. Next pin is white, so I'm going to substitute green since I don't have white wire. And twist that together. Piece of heat shrink. There's the third pin. Last pin is our yellow cable. Strip that back. Try to keep these in a straight so they're not all twisted. heat shrink. And get that on the last pin. Alright, so what you should have, bring that heat shrink all the way up so you got covering up those pins good. It's basically like a pigtail where you can double check you got your colors right, plug that end into that end, and the color should be black, red, white, which is my green, and then yellow. Make sure your colors all line up. And then shrink that heat shrink on there. I'm using a lighter, don't get it too close. It will catch fire. Both sides. Make sure that's all the way up. So you should have your cable finished. Once again, when that plugs into itself, your colors should be in the same order, orientation. And then these cables coming off. Alright. So this one with 4 wires is going to be for the selector switch. The power button only needs 2 of the wires. At the end, I'm going to trim them all up so that they're the same length. And we're gonna trim each one of these back, or strip each one of these back, and tin it with solder. That way it holds in the relay better. It's best if you twist those wires up. These relays were really made for bigger wires, so they can be a little bit of a pain in the butt, but when you put these wires in them. Don't let that solder iron touch the surface. I don't know if you can see. It's laying at an angle so that the iron's not actually touching. It just makes it easier for me to tin these wires. Whatever way's easier for you. Alright. Keep cleaning that tip off too when you're using it, if you're not used to using a solder iron. Alright, so we've got that one done. Let's do the next one. Let's set that aside. Okay, on the second cable, you're only going to need the 2 wires on this side. So the yellow and the black, we can cut right off. Straighten these out a little bit. Slide some heat shrink on there. And we're We're going to need 2 more wires, about 2 feet long. Red. Second color we don't have white, so I think before for the white cable we used green. Yeah, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to use green though, keep all the colors correct, or the same, so that when we hook up the relays, the colors will be in the right order so you can follow it. So the green is going to go to the white. Twist those around. Oops. Alright. And just like before, we want to make sure we're matching up. If this were to be here, the white's going to be on the edge. Oops, I put the heat shrink on first, and that's not going to work, is it? Let's see if I can slide it off. It's got to go over both wires. Check. I'm sorry, red goes on the outside. Red goes on the outside. I'm just going to hold this real quick. Oops. Outside. And white. And then bring up the heat shrink. Go. And then these two. Trim that down, make them both the same exact length. back a little bit. A little twist. So at this point, we should have our two cables made. And next we're going to wire these to the relays, and we should be pretty much done. That's right, on the black wire, on the 4-wire cable at the end where it goes into the relays, we're going to need to add a couple pieces because we got to jumper the ground wire between the 4 relays. So we just need one, two, three, yeah, 2 pieces. Strip the ends, twist them. Basically on the end of the 4-wire cable. That long. So that you end up like this. Oop, do I need one more? That's 3 relays. Yeah, that's just 3 of them. That's right. Because the 4th one, the power has got its own. And basically, I'm just going to kind of do this. This is going to be a jumper between the grounds on the relays. All right. So we've got our 4-wire cable made up with our jumpered ground, and we've got our 2-wire cable made up. Okay, before we wire up the relays, this last part, the price we pay for a $7 relay board is, this thing is active high. So, or I'm sorry, active low. So when the pins on the Raspberry Pi are low, the relays are active. It's actually a poor design because you really don't want the relays on most of the time. You want them off. You only want them to come on when you need them. So we've got to modify this board a little bit. It's not that difficult. I'm going to show with some pictures and whatnot how I'm doing this. We've got to cut some traces and solder some wires. So we'll start off on the bottom here, or we'll start off here. You're going to use a hobby knife, and we're going to cut these traces. I'll show some close-ups and pictures. I don't know how close I can get with this camera. Let me see, hang on. Alright. We're going to cut these 3 bottom traces right here. I'm going to score back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm going to do it in 2 spots, about 1 millimeter apart, just to make sure and kind of dig out, make sure there's no copper touching. Alright. There we go. Now you can test this if you've got an ohm meter. Or a diode tester, either way. Let's see. I've forgotten when I did this last, which was which. Hang on a second. Okay. To make sure the traces are cut, alright, the second pin from the end on the right should not be connected to this diode anymore. See that? On the other side of the cut, we got continuity. On the diode, we do not. The third pin is the second diode. Should not have continuity anymore. Third pin should be the third diode. No continuity. Fourth pin is the fourth diode. And we still have continuity. That's because the trace is on the bottom. So those 3 traces get cut. And this one on the very bottom is going to get cut. Cut it right like this. 2 cuts 1 millimeter apart from each other. And then kind of try to remove the traces in between. So test that last one again in the diode. No continuity. Alright. So what we want to do at this point is on this side, on the traces, we're gonna strip back the green, leaving bare copper. Like that. Same with on the bottom. On this side, and a little bit on the area above that, because that's the ground plane. That's what we're going to connect all of them to. On this side of the cut is here. All right, now at this point, a small piece of wire or the lead from a resistor or whatever you've got handy will work. Get our solder iron heated up. I'm going to lay this right across the 3 on this side of the cut. And solder that down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little dab of solder on each one of these. Solder. Hold this with a pair of pliers. A little bit of solder on this guy. All right. Now the end with the solder, we're going to connect all 3. Together. Not getting anything on this side. No, we don't want the solder to cross the bridge, because then the cut that we did would be completely irrelevant. We're going to bend this around. That. And we're going to make contact with the trace from that pin, which is right at the bottom, and the area right above it that we scraped, staying on this side, not this side. All right, with that done, what we should have then is, if we do continuity from this last pin, which is the ground pin, to the first diode, we should have continuity. To the second diode, we should have continuity. I might have missed the second diode. From the last pin here, first diode, continuity. Second diode, continuity. Third diode, continuity. Fourth diode. Looks like we missed something on the bottom here. Didn't solder right. Oh, my bad. On the bottom, we were supposed to stay on this side. So, let's just move that over. I think I pulled it off. Supposed to strip that side on the bottom. Looking at the top, we stayed on this side of the cut. On the bottom, we were supposed to stay on this side of the cut. So I need to scrape the other side. Double sure, make sure that cut. Pull the top up. Shoot. So on this side, we stay on that side of the cut. And on the bottom, we stay on this side of the cut. That side. Alright, so at this point, if we hook continuity up to that last pin on this side, continuity to the first diode, continuity to the next one, continuity to the next one, and continuity to the last one. Alright, that's the first part of this. There's one part left to go. We're going to flip it over, and you're going to see this trace right here. It comes from the ground plane. We're going to cut this in 1, 2, 3 places. So the diode comes out, connect to it. So our first cut double check this. So you'll see 3 traces here. 1, 2, 3. It's the bottom one. Right before the double holes. Scrape away on the right side. And then down here, right before the next set of holes. Down here before this last hole. Scrape away on the right hand side. Scrape away on the right hand side of the cut. Last one is here. And the last one, you gotta cut right before here. Alright, if we did that properly, we take our meter and put it on the bottom pin here. We should not have continuity there, there, or there. Actually, right where that needs to be scraped off, right? So none of these points should be touching. That one, that one, that one, or that one. At this point, we just need some wire. Doesn't matter what color. Put a little solder there. And this wire is now going to come to the second pin that goes to the front. And put it on that second pin. Second pin on the header there. Don't want it touching anything else. There we go. The next one, which is here, put a little solder on the right side there, the area we scraped off. Be very careful when you solder this wire on, you don't bridge that gap. That's why I'm putting the wire this way, just so I don't bridge that gap. And this one's going to come to the next pin. Oh, shoot. To the next pin. All right. We're not stripping very much off. Just enough to get it on there. There's not going to be any force on it once we... Okay, next one. And it's going to come down to the third, well, not the third pin. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no wire on the first one there. If stripping these beforehand works better for you than it's working for me, then do it that way. Touching, I don't want that touching. So if I put a little kink in it. There we go. Okay. That's all good. And the last one. Go on that last. And then down to the second to the last pin. Like that. So this trace right here, we cut it and then started the wire on this side of the cut. Then we cut it again right before these two little holes. See, this first cut is right before those two little holes. Next one is right before the next two holes, and soldered it on that side. Next cut is right before the next two holes, and we soldered it on that side. The next cut is before this pin, which is right over a hole. You can scrape it and solder it right where the hole is. And at this point, if we go to the first pin, we should have continuity on the right side of this little resistor. That's the second from the right. Third from the right, it should be this resistor. Fourth from the right, it should be this resistor, and fifth from the right, it should be that one. That's it. And next we will wire it up. Alright, starting with our 4-wire cable that we made up. Make sure all the wires are untangled. The black, where we made our little jumpers. Starting from the bottom of the relay down here. 1, 2, 3 pin underneath the 3rd screw. Give it a little tug, make sure it's in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 underneath the 6th screw. Give it a little tug. And underneath the 9th screw. Give it a little tug. Those are good. Alright. So then the next color is the red one. It's going underneath the 2nd screw. Little tug, it's good. The next wire on here is the green one, which goes underneath the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th screw. If you don't get it in the first time, loosen the screw back up. The wire back in. Give it a little tug, good. And the last wire is the yellow one, and it's going under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th screw. Give it a little tug. Alright, so that's our first cable. The second cable, there's 2 wires only. And they go under, doesn't matter which one goes where, the last 2 screws. Give it a little tug. And get, whoop, didn't go in. Give it a little tug, we're good. Now, this one with the 2 wires, if you unplug the power button, it plugs into the circuit board on the Peopoly Moai. You unplug the power button and you plug this in. Then you plug the power button back into the other side. It can only go one way. And then the 4-wire one, you plug into where the selector knob plugged in, right on the back of the selector knob. The power is on the circuit board, but the selector knob is right on the knob. This will plug right into the knob, and the knob wire will plug right in here. It'll only go one way, so once you plug that all in to your Moai and turn this on and go to the web page, you should have complete control over the Moai. And if you get the camera pointed at the front panel, you'll be able to see that also as you're making adjustments on your Moai. I've included 3D print files for a case to put these in, which has cord reliefs, and also a camera mount to the Moai.